Okay, we are live, and I just want to introduce what this webcast is about. I'm Julie Johnson, and I am hosting a webcast here for interesting people that I have met who are similar to me in their interest in supporting environmental issues. So I have with me today Adam. Hello, Adam.
Hey, good afternoon there, Julie.
Thank you for joining me. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself for those of you who don't know who you are?
Okay, I'll just go briefly about myself. I live in the lovely city of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Currently, I work as an accounting clerk, but I'm also doing some post-grad education in renewable energy from the University of Toronto. I'm also doing some social media courses as well part-time, and when I'm not doing that, I'm a climate reality leader, and I also volunteer at the United Way, and very passionate about clean tech and environmental economic policy.
Okay, lots to unpack there. First, maybe I'll just touch on the climate reality leader because that's sort of our connection is we both are climate reality leaders now. And maybe you could just explain that for anyone who's viewing who may not be familiar with it.
Well, Joe, that's kind of interesting. Okay, so basically, in case you know, the Climate Reality Project was founded by Al Gore back in, I believe, 2007 after An Inconvenient Truth to raise awareness about the issues of climate change and its solutions. And you're in Toronto along with me in July for a 2-day session for training and just to mingle with other like-minded folk.
Yes, that's it. That's what we did in July. And this webcast was inspired by all the people that I met there. So far, I've had 2 webcasts, and both guests have been climate reality leaders, and we're at the event. I am hoping to expand that and also meet people who were maybe not at the event, but are also like us, sort of, I keep using the word ordinary or regular folks. I don't mean that to belittle us in any way. It's just to kind of separate us from, say, politicians or celebrities. And part of the reason why I maybe use that language is to kind of say, like, we're just everyday people who are going about our lives and like other regular folks out there. But at some point, we sort of, I don't know, woke up maybe is the word, to environmental issues. And I think a lot of people are aware of them, but at some point you want to take action. So that's what I sort of mean about wake up. So was there a point in your life where your interest was sparked, or a moment or a series of moments?
I guess, well, I was always interested in environmental issues. I guess it was back in 2005 and 2006 with, I guess 2005 started with Hurricane Katrina, uh, seeing the devastation of what occurred there. And it got me thinking, could this be what's in store for other cities in the future? Like what happened with Hurricane Sandy back in 2012, with superstorms, which we're now seeing becoming almost fairly frequently normal now, and also seeing an inconvenient truth just with Al Gore and that wonderful documentary. It was quite a eye opener in regards to, I guess, how carbon emissions are affecting the atmosphere, increasing temperatures, and increasing risk to everything ranging from nature to infrastructure.
Right. So you're going back a little bit in time there too. I think An Inconvenient Truth really hit home for a lot of people. And then, of course, he talks about extreme weather events, and all of a sudden we see the evidence all around us. And part of what happened at that climate reality conference was that Al Gore showed his updated presentation, and he just seemed to have an almost endless amount of new examples of extreme weather. And I feel like every time I turn on the news, there's another example of extreme weather event happening. Would you agree?
I could, you know what, you Ron, like you could, about 2 weeks ago, Winnipeg, we got hit with another rainstorm in like an hour, and pretty much got almost, I think, like 40 millimeters, like in some spots in like an hour too, and it flooded some roads so quickly. And the funny thing after that, is that it reached the same on that same day as well. Just to put some more context into it, the climate change credit of City of Winnipeg was let go. So it's kind of an interesting mix of those two stories that led to a front page story in the Free Press showing flooded street and mentioning about extreme weather and how the city's letting go of its climate change coordinator doesn't help matters. But getting back to it, with extreme weather, yeah, we're seeing it all around, and even now it's warm here in Winnipeg, like supposed to be like 28 Celsius tomorrow, and we're still getting mosquitoes at this time of year, which is, I don't know if that's a sign of our future, but yeah, it's getting bitten by these things, and where it should be more like July, you're getting bitten by mosquitoes in Winnipeg rather than September. Just yeah.
I recall him mentioning, by him, I mean Al Gore, talking about mosquitoes at the conference. He was saying how with the change in temperatures, obviously the ecology changes and animals were, and insects or whatever, respond to those new temperatures, and that mosquitoes would extend their range, for instance, and the consequence of disease related to that. Moving on to another area is to kind of ask, you mentioned clean tech as an interest, and this was going to be part of my question, and sort of what are some of the things that you've done personally with regards to environmental issues. So you kind of saw Inconvenient Truth and started asking questions. Did that lead to any kind of action? And then I'd like to tie that into your interest in clean tech.
Well, when I went back to the university, when I went to the University of Winnipeg a few years ago, I did take some economic courses that were environmentally related, like environmental economics, natural resource economics, and energy economics. So it's quite interesting. In fact, when some papers on some issues I delved into involved carbon taxation in Manitoba, smart grids, and biofuels. Those are some of my interests regards to clean tech, namely trying somehow in some way to develop a carbon tax in Manitoba, which would be nice, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime in the future, especially after the PST debacle. So,
Do you mind defining what clean tech is for those who may not know?
yeah, well, just basically, I'll give you nuts and bolts what Wikipedia had, and basically what it is basically products or services which improve operations, performance, and productivity or efficiencies while reducing costs and waste and consumption. Now, basically, my understanding, my readings are there's various sectors of clean tech. There's the energy sector, where you hear a lot about renewable energy, stuff like that. The circular economy, which involves like waste, like recycling, reducing waste, that aspect. Water management, mobility, transportation. That's when you talk about electric vehicles, car sharing, like Uber, stuff like that. Resource and material use. That's when you get into bioplastics, treeless paper like straw paper, sugarcane paper, as well as, and then energy efficiency. That's when you talk about heating and air conditioning, smart thermostats, stuff like that.
So it has a very wide range. And as you were listing off those items, it struck me that they all sound very intriguing, and yet so different from what we're used to. I guess that's why sometimes they might also be called alternative. And I guess the idea is to shift away from what we have now and what is sort of known in the traditional format to these sort of alternative and new realms. How do you see that transition happening?
Well, I see that transition actually happening right now. In fact, I know with renewable energy, you're starting to see that the amount of money that's being put in. I know, like last year globally, there was 318 billion invested, according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, and in Canada alone, Clean Energy Canada just mentioned, I think the other day, that 11 billion was invested in Canada, mainly by provinces, but lack of federal interest. I won't get into that, but I mean the trends are moving slightly. And the ironic thing is, like, oil prices are falling, and you think with oil prices falling that you would see a more oil consumption, but it's interesting to see how this shift is happening. And I think a lot of this shift is also reason why renewables are also advancing quickly. Partially, it's policy in the U.S. and at a global level, like China and other countries, but also the prices of technology have fallen. Like solar panels, the cost have continued to fall to a point where it's almost at parity with fossil fuels in some areas of the world. So that's exciting. The opportunity, reason why it's also advancing, it's giving opportunity for developing countries to leapfrog past fossil fuels. Like you're seeing, or what happened, 10, 15 years ago with these countries where they use cell phones to leapfrog past landlines, which was very exciting. So I'm hoping we're starting to see that with developing countries. So it's kind of an exciting time to be alive, but ironically, it's also kind of a not so exciting time with all the extreme weather events we're seeing.
So I know going back to the Climate Reality Conference and Al Gore's presentation, the first half of his presentation was focused on sort of walking you through the science of climate change and the impacts of it, like we said, extreme weather, for instance, or the how that affects the ecologies. I mentioned the mosquitoes and things like that. And then the other half of it was a focus on some of the stuff you just mentioned there, the increase in renewable energy use and the decreasing cost, and also about developing countries leapfrogging past the need to have that fossil fuel infrastructure and just going straight to renewable sources. What would you say to people who, I don't know, I came across an article once and there was people saying, oh, renewable energy is too expensive, and they were really down with it. I didn't know if that was fear of change, or what would you say to some of the naysayers?
Well, you know what I say to the naysayers in terms of those who think that renewable energy is expensive. I mean, we're seeing that the costs are coming down. It's becoming more affordable, and even some policies, even in the U.S., are starting to being put in place which will help lower income people get a hold of these newer, cleaner technologies. And there's also the opportunity now with the internet technology and the sharing economy. You also have the opportunity to finance clean tech projects for lower income people through crowdfunding, which
Mm-hmm.
is quite exciting. So I'm kind of seeing where that trend goes, and I actually I wrote a chapter in an upcoming book that delves into solar energy, which is coming out in October. But I was part of a group of authors who wrote various segments about solar energy, and I wrote about financing. This is one of the things I mentioned, that crowdfunding has a lot of potential to open up a new realm of accessing clean tech to lower income people. So I'm kind of interested to see where that goes. I mean, we're seeing that solar mosaic where people can buy certain chunks of solar energy and invest in projects for like schools or lower income neighborhoods. So I'm kind of excited to see that happen. So
So how do you think people can support the idea of clean tech? I guess I'm wondering, like we talked before about sort of federally, provincially, municipally. I don't know if
yeah,
that's a word.
municipally, it's a hard name sometimes.
So how do you get your hands on it? It feels like, is it? I'm just curious, or how can people support it, or what's your ideas around that?
Well, here's some ideas. There's two ways, some ways that people can get around it. One, there's through investments. If you have money, you can invest in ethical fund RSPs. I know in Ontario they've got a solar energy GIC that you can invest in. I don't know if some company does. I'm not totally sure of the name. But if you can't afford it, then the other way is through political action, looking who supports clean tech in this upcoming federal election. I won't say which party to go vote for, but look at the policies, see who you're most aligned to, see who will bring the best bang for dollar in terms of clean tech, and then go from there. And also provincial election at a provincial level, whenever your next provincial election is, I don't know when it is going to be in Ontario, but I know in Manitoba it's going to be next year. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, Manitoba is blessed with hydro, so we really don't. Hydro is so that we don't have to worry about investing in other clean technologies, which is a blessing and also a hindrance. But yeah, like political action, like elections, listen to candidates speak where their stance is on climate change and clean tech.
I'm not sure if we made the connection clear, but the idea is, I just want to step back a second and spell it out. But the idea is fossil fuels contribute to the warming of the atmosphere. I don't know if you want to
Right.
take us through this and how that's different from what clean tech does. Do you want to just kind of maybe just do a little spelling out of what the differences are and how that impacts climate change?
Okay, so basically, fossil fuels, CO2s. Okay, what happens is the sun comes down on the Earth and gets to the atmosphere, and there's some gets bounced back up, and then some gets trapped, to keep the temperature normal amongst the Earth. However, with fossil fuels, which have been around since the Industrial Revolution, been about a 40% increase, what happens is there's more carbon emission being trapped in the atmosphere, which is making the planet warmer. Now, you examples of fossil fuels are coal, oil, natural gas, used in cars, heating, so on and so forth to run industry. Clean tech, on the other hand, offers people the chance to use tools like wind, solar, biofuels, electric vehicles to transport themselves, run industries on next to zero emissions or very low carbon emissions, which is critical in moving forward. So
Right, critical in making sure that temperature doesn't rise anymore is sort of,
to two
I guess.
point to two yeah to 2 Celsius, which is what critics say is the critical tipping point in many reports. Or another way of putting it is to make sure that we have to get back to at least 350 parts per million, which I think currently right now it's around 400 parts per million.
I remember Al Gore at the conference being quite optimistic that that could happen. But I know it was a question of when. So that's why there was certainly at that conference a sense of urgency needed to make the switch. I don't know whether to ask you whether you think it's going to happen or not. It's a bit hard to predict. It does seem to be kind of everything is shifting that way, but will it be quick enough? I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. But I see by our time here, we're about out of time. But I guess what would your overall advice be for someone who is tuning in, I guess, to the issue of climate change, but not sure where to go with it? I know you mentioned some of the things you mentioned in relation to clean tech. Is there anything else you would add?
Like I said, go on the internet, read blogs, like read some clean tech blogs. Like the one I write up for Cleantechnia.com has up to date articles about the clean tech industry, like on wind and solar. If you're interested on the policy of climate change, read blogs like Climate Progress. If you're interested on the business and clean tech aspect of climate change, read Thomas Friedman's Hot, Flat, and Crowded book that came out in 2008. But if you're more interested in an activist slant on it, read Naomi Klein's This Changes Everything, which got rave reviews. So it depends where you are in the preventing climate change aspect in terms of reading books. Like if you're more the business person, read Thomas Friedman's Hot, Flat, and Crowded. But if you're more the activist person, Naomi Klein's This Changes Everything would probably be a better choice.
Awesome. Okay, I will be putting the links to those sites and also to those books down below at the end. And now, finally, is there anything else, just in general, you'd like to add?
No, Jill, I just want to thank you for taking your time on a Sunday afternoon, and take care and have a good week.
All right, thanks. Thanks for joining me on this. I'm just going to stop the broadcast now. Thanks so
Okay,
much.
no problem. Thanks. Bye.